It is always easier to fight for one's principles than to live up to them. Alfred Adler. On the morning of Sunday, September 28th, Zeke Perkins was on his way to an architectural boat tour in Chicago when he came upon approximately 80 federal agents, armed with M16s and long rifles, some masked, walking as they made their way toward River North, a busy tourist area. They were led by Greg Bovino, Commander at Large of the U.S. Border Patrol. This is how our story begins. Welcome to Conversations on Healing and Growth. I'm Martin Perkins.
And I'm Ben Umstead. So, Zeke, it's that nice, crisp Chicago weather. There's that expansive quality to downtown Chicago, the openness and the big buildings, this incredible combination of kind of city and Midwest landscape. Experiencing such a sight, we've seen this so much now over the past months and become more and more aggressive, but seeing it on the ground, these soldiers, these people that all of us would say are violating spaces, what was that initial feeling rising in your body when you saw them come around the bend?
Thanks for having me, guys. Well, I think I was surprised. I was with my girlfriend, Savannah. I think we were both, yeah, definitely surprised to see them. Yeah, I think I've been in protests before, and the sort of dynamics that arise between protesters and police. Maybe it was a bit like you're coming right into a protest midway, not really expecting to go there.
Right. All the preparation and planning and group collaboration and action that can occur in a protest. And yet here you are as an individual with this knowledge, and yet there isn't the group dynamic. So can you walk us through your choices in those initial minutes?
I really had no idea about Greg Vivino or who would be in charge of them. We pretty quickly just tried to figure out what was going on. We started filming them. We asked other people around. There was maybe one other guy who was taking pictures. Other people would sort of yell at them as they walk by, tell them to leave Chicago. But there wasn't an organized response. And then there was this guy, there's a video now going around of him on CNN, but he was like on a e-bike and he was just doing laps and yelling at them that he wasn't a citizen. He was just trying to sort of egg them on. And there's a video where they almost grab him, but he gets away. And that happened again when we were there. I wasn't there for the part where for the video that everyone's seen, but a different time they tried to chase him down and he got away again. So it felt sort of like, you stumble upon a crime, like you feel like you ought to do something. So I think we just tried to do something. I think a few other people did the same. They saw that it was like someone should follow these people through the city, see what they're doing. I mean, basically the way they're moving is they have like one or two trucks that we saw that say Border Patrol on them. Because at first everyone was just calling them ICE, but they were getting sensitive and kept telling us that they're not ICE, that they're Border Patrol. But yeah, there was a few trucks that have Border Patrol, clearly identifiable as Border Patrol, and that's where they have the people that they, captured. They would put them in the back of those trucks. And then otherwise, just moving around the city, it seemed like they get these unmarked minivans and GMCs and SUVs, and that's how they moved around. But yeah, we just sort of started filming them, and I've never really seen anything like it with the masks and the machine guns and full sort of military get up. They had grenades, and Bavino has like a hunting knife. Another guy had what looked like brass knuckles. So it's sort of they kind of come across as an occupying army. They were handing out $20 bills to street vendors, I guess trying to like win goodwill maybe as they're moving through the city. It seemed like a lot of them were veterans, right? When people would say like, "What are you doing here?" They'd say, "Oh, I fought for your freedom in Afghanistan." Or I think that mentality is definitely brought to Chicago.
There is this sense collectively that many folks are feeling of what it feels like here. And you noted that you had never seen anything like that before. You'd never experienced like that before. You have been in major protests during major movements across the last 15 years in the United States, including major actions in New York City where you did see police pushback. The difference here, could you paint that contrast a little bit more for us? Was it just their attitudes? Was it just the gear? What made that so starkly different from any of these times where you were, as an activist, organized and in a place and engaging with police?
I've been thinking about this. I think there's a few things. Well, big ones are the masks, the M16s. Cops have definitely become more and more militarized over the last 20 years, probably going back further. I'm not as well versed in, every stage of the militarization of the police, but, when we were in Occupy, I definitely saw police brutalize people, hit people with clubs or be really rough or spray people with pepper spray, but they didn't have machine guns. They also didn't have masks. I think that's a big difference. The masks is like a really different feeling. I've seen it in other countries, in Colombia, Mexico, Guatemala. Often that's actually because the police are wearing those to hide from, reprisals from the narcos.
I want to ground us in your moment again. You talked about what it could be like with pepper spray or billy clubs. So you have this sense in your body, a physical felt sense of those experiences, being there with them and being close. The picture that we'll be using for this podcast, you're engaged directly with Bovino. You're right there with these guys. Did you notice a shift in your body and what kind of feelings and thoughts were coming up as they moved, as you moved closer to them?
Yeah, I think that I mean, one thing I'll add to just the way it's sort of different is that when you're protesting and encountering police officers, the police are responding to you, right? Like I've never been in a situation where the police came out to scare people. They maybe came out to scare us out of the street, but they didn't go to a tourist section to scare the tourists, right? So this was a different dynamic. It was a demonstration of state violence. It wasn't a demonstration of, from citizens for demands from their, government. The government was sort of demonstrating power. So it's a sort of inversion of usually the like relationship. We're responding to them taking over the streets, basically, as an occupying army, right? The other thing there is like the police are representatives of the local power structure. This is different, right? It's the federal government's an authoritarian government occupying blue cities. Just all those dynamics are different. Like I don't love the police, but it's a really different feeling and they're doing something different actually. But to get to the question around like what did it feel like? It was interesting. I mean, I think that I was struck by a definite lack of like humanity from the Border Patrol agents. I also think it's a question of like who raises their hand for this assignment, I imagine these folks are from Texas, from Arizona, New Mexico, where there's a border, right? Where there's the southern border. And they're sort of the folks who want to go to LA and bust heads. They want to go to Chicago and bust heads. Even within the Border Patrol, which I think is a pretty militarized, desensitized group of people, this is probably the fringiest group within them. And yeah, that was definitely something you felt and like didn't see the humanity in the people around them. But yeah, it was definitely like scary. I think with Savannah, she was sort of like she she gets sort of mad and sort of like rush towards the into the crowd of them. And a few times I sort of pulled her back because, I don't know exactly what would have happened, but it didn't feel great to rush like if there was a bunch of them sort of in a circle to rush into the circle, you know. But we were among them, you know, like with them behind in front and ahead of us for most of the, you know, few hours that we were following them around. When we were there, they only made one arrest, which was a guy who I didn't see it. I saw them start running somewhere, so I just ran after them. And someone else told me that it was a man who'd left the Catholic Charities, which is like a soup kitchen, and clearly just like working poor immigrant. And he was alone. And supposedly when he came out, he saw the soldiers and he got scared, so he started to run, which is why they chased him. That was their reason for chasing him. But when I got there, that's when Vivino sort of got in my way because I was trying to film and get closer. And that was like the testiest they got with me. And he, you know, asked if I was a citizen and, you know, he's just trying to intimidate me, I think, out of being there, really. He said, "Oh, can you show proof or something like that?" And I said, "I don't have to show you anything." Which I don't know if that's true. I think it's actually a legal gray area. I think they could put me under detention. I wouldn't have to show it, but it could make up for a pretty unpleasant weekend if you don't do it. But yeah, I think we had a little bit of a back and forth. And I was just trying to get closer to the guy to see if there's something I should be doing, you know, to get his name or something like that. So I was like, fuck this. And I started to walk around, but for a moment, there was some like, maybe I'm running. And there was this thing that they were like, make sure it doesn't get away. Like they said something like that about me. And I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not fucking going. I sort of gave it back to them a little bit and then kept walking towards the guy. And I do wonder if I had actually gotten scared by him threatening me and ran, they probably would have tackled me and, you know, and I probably would have been put under arrest, at least temporarily. Which I do think is sort of like their, you know, I think when everyone is yelling at them and trying to sort of make them feel unwanted, there's a lot of, you know, oh, you guys are cowards. And I mean, there is something obviously cowardly, like we're filming them and we're unarmed, you know, with our faces exposed, and they're filming us and they have machine guns and, you know, vests and masks, right? So, you know, they're winking at us and taking pictures of us, the people that are following them to intimidate us, asking if we're citizens, you know. But I think something that we can call them cowards or whatever, but the real thing is I think they're more like predators. Like it's like when a bear runs at you, if you run from the bear, it's gonna kill you, right? Like the thing you're supposed to do is get big and wave your hands, and I did feel that with them, right? They don't understand or respect anything but force and firmness and response. They're soldiers, and I think, you know, that's really probably how you take your advantage, and then you when you're outnumbered, you pull away. So I think that is one thing, maybe if there is any takeaways from it, which is like we need to be out there and there needs to be more of us than there are of them because it stops being worth it because it's a show. And if it looks like they're weaker, if it looks like they're cowards, they're just gonna go home.
Would you say that that was really an unspoken tactic and strategy between all of you that stayed with them over these hours? Was this something that was communicated, or was this just something that was a given over the minutes and then hours that you all were glued to them as they moved about the area?
We didn't have necessarily like a coordinated plan. There was a retired couple there. There were two people who were the woman was connected to some sort of network of people who would respond. So she was the one who sort of had mo the most sense of what to do, I think. So that was really helpful. I do think that it seemed to me that people in Chicago really weren't ready or expecting this at that moment, because I think if they were, there would have been a lot more people there faster. By the end, there was a little bit of a crowd, and then that was when the guys all got in vans and SUVs, which I imagine they were just stopping at that point, and that's when really the most protesters were able to amass against them. So it wasn't like we made them disperse, but it was interesting that like the mo there was a bunch of us, then they all got in vans and drove away.
I want to go back to the moment with Bovino because you're talking about them being soldiers, you're talking about them being predators, and energetically, it sounds like you remained quite calm. You remained in a state of resistance, and let them be the aggressors, the angry ones, not really giving them much. Can you speak to how, within your own awareness, within that sensation of Bovino questioning your citizenship, him, a middle aged white man, looking at a young white man such as yourself and saying, "Where are you from?" How did that feel in your body, and how did you make sure that you were grounded in your convictions, in your sense of justice, yes, but in your sense of just self?
I don't know. Mm. I mean, I think in the moment I was, yeah, I think I saw what he was doing. I don't know, it was an interesting thing. I think like I've been in enough protests to know sort of like how far you can push it with cops. And usually cops, if they're I've seen cops during Black Lives Matter do some stuff that was surprising to me, but I think it was largely like I've seen them like sort of kind of randomly run out and grab people. But in reality, it wasn't really random because they'd been protesting for months and they actually just knew the leaders and they started targeting them. They were just like, didn't want them to be organizing any more protests, right? But generally, you know sort of the limit. If it's not a situation where you're like protesting every day with the same cops, you sort of know the limit of like, he's gonna say he's gonna arrest me, you know, and I probably can do it two more times. And then that third time, like, I better not do it because he's actually going to arrest me then. There's a little bit of a back and forth where they sort of try to limit the space you're allowed to walk or what you're allowed to do. In this case, it's sort of a new language because they're more on the aggression, right? They're like trying to provoke provoke you to do something that makes you look, I guess, like you should be arrested. And, you know, we did. We followed him around and yelled at him for 3 hours. So we were still doing the same thing. We were still engaged in sort of a, you know, a counter protest to try to get them to not want to be there anymore, to not be out with guns scaring people.
In that sense, did you feel worn down as you stepped away from the experience? What was that sense that you felt?
It was, yeah, we were definitely pretty jacked up after. And we ended up doing the boat tour, but it was a few hours after after that. Um,
What did that feel like being on the boat after such an intense back and forth, like fireballs being lobbed in every direction between people? The boat tour, was that a serene experience? How was that grounding?
It was good, you know. It was like I mean, in a way, like I'm still not feeling that experience. Yeah, because it was new. It was new and I think yeah, it was hard to come down from the experience, and I don't know if we really totally did. It just showed probably both of us what, you know, what sort of stage of authoritarian takeover we're at and what some of the struggle is going to look like, I think. It's going to be more of we're going to have to meet these folks in the street and I think be more prepared because yeah, I think they want to make it normal. It does recall those, you know, pictures you see of like an old lady hitting Nazis marching down the street or the brown shirts with their purse or whatever. And that's sort of where we're at now. And most people don't. They're not that lady.
When you were on the boat moving through the extraordinary history of Chicago, a city that in the United States holds so many kind of ground zero moments for labor, moving through that space as you were coming down, did you know at that moment that you had just experienced a part of history in a way that, well, it may be undescribable, but there's a feeling of that?
I was there with Occupy and I felt something similar then. With Occupy, it was different. There was a global financial crisis, and there was this moment where I think people saw that the old world order, sort of neoliberalism, was breaking down. And there was all these like visions of what a future could be, sort of like a little window into the unknown. Maybe things could be really better, a lot better for most people. And I think this is a different moment. You know, they're both like street theater, really. I mean, Occupy, I'm thinking of a moment in Occupy when we were walking across the Brooklyn Bridge. They projected from, I think, one of the public housing buildings onto the Verizon building all the slogans of occupy. So it's like we are the 99% projecting, and we're crossing the Brooklyn Bridge, which only a few months earlier 1,000 people have been arrested on. And it was this feeling like, all right, even if we're gonna lose the Zuccotti Park right now, even if this movement isn't gonna lead to whatever maybe we all hoped it would be, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna, like, this stage of capitalism is dying. There's gonna be some new thing. It didn't turn out that way. But I mean, I think it did turn out that way in as much as like the old thing has continued to decay, and now there's this new thing being birthed. But it's not what we wanted. It's instead of it being this sort of utopian vision of the future and big sort of street theater of the people, instead we have authoritarian, street theater where they're coming out and playing army in our streets, trying to scare people. I think as a unionist, you could say, well, what does it really matter? They're doing dress up, right? Like this isn't a real thing. Outside of even the enforcement they did, the building they raided, and all the citizens they put in jail, along with non-citizens in Chicago, like from Sunday. I think it's also just the spectacle does matter, and we can't have people think that this is normal or okay, or that people can be taken off the street for no reason, or that it's okay to have masked men with machine guns, drop in where you're just trying to have a nice Sunday,
I'm excited to announce that I have a opening date for my new community drop-in acupuncture clinic, and that is October 19th from 5 to 8 p.m. The community acupuncture clinic will be held on Tuesdays and Sundays, 5 to 8 p.m. on Tuesdays, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Sundays. This is a drop-in clinic. There's no appointment necessary. Clients will be seen and treated as they arrive using a combination of auricular points, which are points on the ear, as well as full body points. This is not a private one-to-one acupuncture session that's being offered. This is a donation-based clinic. Clients contribute what they are able. Cash, check, Zelle, and PayPal will be accepted as methods of payment. I look forward to either seeing you at the clinic or hopefully your referrals of folks in your life that might need acupuncture but may not have felt that they could afford it.
Language of the Soul, Conversations on Healing and Growth is produced by Ben Umstead and Martin Perkins, with editing and music by Ben Umstead.